Thank you for joining us today. Can you start by telling us about your background and what led to your near-death experience? Certainly. I had a near-death experience in 1994 while I was in Tucson, Arizona. I was there attending and working at a trade show, which was one of our longest shows of the year, lasting 14 days. I had been doing these shows for years already. What happened during this particular trade show? On the second or third day, a very large number of people started getting sick at the show. By the third day, I remember a lady across from me actually collapsed in her booth, and they had to come and pick her up with an ambulance. I was still fine at that point, but on the fourth day, it hit me hard. Can you describe how you felt when you got sick? I got deathly ill from this virus. According to the people I spoke to in the medical clinics and the hospital, they said it was massive, like a terrible, terrible flu or some kind of virus. When it hit me on the fourth day, it closed down my whole throat. I could barely breathe, my fever was super high, and I felt extremely weak. What did you do when you realized how sick you were? I had to leave the several people I had working for me at the show and actually go back up to the hotel room. Once I was in the room, I decided I would have to get up and go downstairs. I didn't even feel well enough to drive, so I asked to call a cab to take me to the hospital. What was the situation like at the hospital? When I got to the hospital, there were a lot of people there. It was massive. They checked me out slightly, and then they asked if I wouldn't mind going to a different medical clinic. They had medical clinics set up all over because so many people got desperately ill. What treatment did you receive at the medical clinic? At the medical clinic, the first thing they put me on was oxygen. They told me my oxygen levels were very low. I remember them talking about giving me an intravenous antibiotic, and they also gave me an inhaler. This was later on in the day before I left because it took them a while just to get my oxygen levels back up to normal. Did they give you any instructions before you left? Yes, they told me that if I continued feeling this way, I would have to get into the hospital the next day. They said, if you feel this way in the morning, just get yourself to the hospital any way you can. What happened that night after you returned to your hotel? That night turned into a night of light and love. It was magnificent. My near-death experience was so clear, so profound. Can you walk us through your experience of leaving your body? I remember actually the way I left my body. I saw myself leave my body through my eyes in this beautiful, beautiful glowing mist. It was magnificent. When I was in the mist, now hovering above my body looking down upon myself, I first recognized myself. When I first left my body, I knew it was me. The body looked like it was wrapped in pain, it wasn't moving. Did you have any understanding of what was happening at that moment? From what I remember and was taught on the other side, the spirit waits around the body to make sure the body has no life left in it, that it's completely dead. I remember hovering for a while, but it got to a point where I started feeling this amazing, beautiful feeling of love. Can you describe this feeling of love? The love was so wonderful, it engulfed me. At this time, I didn't even recognize the body on the bed anymore. I was still looking down upon the bed and my body down there. Then, when the brightness hit, I don't remember turning, it just automatically turned me, and this beautiful gateway of light opened. It drew me right into this unbelievable tunnel of light with magnificent colors. How would you describe the intensity of this experience? Everything was magnified. It felt to me like hundreds, maybe thousands of times the beauty of it. I started moving through the tunnel, and the love I was talking about just a minute ago kept increasing and got bigger and bigger and bigger. It was amazing. I felt like I became the love in this light. What did you see as you were moving through this tunnel? I was moving, and the colors were going by me and through me. I felt like I was going through the universe. It was magnificent, seeing nebulas going by and beautiful constellations like Orion and things like that. Can you tell us about your arrival at the end of this journey? I remember my arrival so clearly. This part was unbelievable because I'd been traveling for a while now. When I arrived, I said to myself over and over and over again, I'm home. I'm finally home. Then I repeated it again, and I heard this beautiful soft voice say, yes, you're home in the light of our Lord. Were there others there to greet you? Yes, I was actually speaking to others there. There were family members, but the person who was speaking to me announced who she was. She said, my name is Antonia, and I was with you on your journey home. I didn't even realize she was in the tunnel with me. We were moving at the speed of light, it was unbelievably beautiful. How did it feel to be greeted by these beings? At this point, it was still magnificent. The greeting felt to me like family and friends. We were all communicating, and our communication was all telepathy. It was beautiful because you could hear the voices in your head, and they could hear you. That part was wonderful. Did Antonia explain her role to you? Yes, Antonia explained to me, I'm the one that takes you in and I bring you home. I'm one of your guardians. Then she announced my second guardian. Who was your second guardian? As soon as she said that, I heard, "Hello, Billy." This was my brother's voice. My brother had died when I was very young. I was almost 16 years old. He was the one that very much took care of me growing up. What happened next? At that time, my brother said, "It's time for your life review." He took me to this beautiful illuminated area, and things started that were unbelievable. Now I was back in my body, my brother Peter was alongside me, and he was showing me events of my life. Can you describe the life review process? It was crystal clear because now I was in full form. This is where I first remembered who I was again, because before, I was just part of love and light and happiness and joy. Then, it was almost like a flickering screen wave. He would bring me to events in my life and showed me all the events of my life, all the good events, all the good that I've ever done, the good deeds that I've done for people, taking care of my friends growing up. On and on, they showed me the good things I did in my life. Did they only show you the positive aspects of your life? No, then all of a sudden, they showed me the wrong things that I've done in my life. The wrong or bad things, let's call it, that I believe we all do in our lives at times. How did it feel to experience these negative aspects? You don't only know what the wrong is when you're there, you experience it. You feel the hurt and pain that you actually put onto someone else. I'll never forget the feeling I had when I left my first wife. That feeling became so emotionally strong for me now on this side. I became her pain, I was part of the physical pain. The pain was so bad. On top of that pain being bad, there was the physical and emotional pain that my son had. He was a little boy at the time. It sounds like an intense emotional experience. How did you process these feelings? At the time, I felt myself to be young and just, you know, people in life sometimes as we grow, we have to grow, and it takes time to grow. But the key fact is that in your life review, when you're experiencing those wrong things or bad things you might have done in your life, you physically become the pain. You are the pain. Was there a point where it became too much to bear? Yes, I remember at one time they were showing me something where I physically became this pain again, and this emotional sign was so bad that I just screamed, "I can't take it anymore. Please, I'm sorry, please." What happened after that? Then I heard a voice say, "The good outweighs the bad." All of a sudden, all this gray left, and we were standing there now back in spirit form. Now I looked at myself, and that misty green light turned into a beam. It was a beam of beautiful, beautiful light that was just amazing. We were still conversing back and forth, Peter and I. Did you meet anyone else at this point? Yes, at that time, I was introduced to my third guardian. I met 3 guardians on my travels through heaven, and they brought me to another level. Peter and my third guardian's name was Oren. What did they show you next? They explained to me that this was the Hall of Events. I didn't understand what they were talking about. All I know is I felt like I was in this massive, beautiful auditorium. Now they would transport me from scene to scene. I think this started actually before I was born, and I saw things that I was never part of. What kind of events did they show you? They weren't showing me the good or bad things that I've done anymore. They would show me events of the past, events of the present, and events of the future. It was unbelievable. They were bringing me on this ride that was physical at the time because we were back in our bodies again. Can you give us some examples of the events you witnessed? I'll never forget some of the things that happened along the way. They showed me wars that I was never even alive to be in. They showed me events that led all the way up to 9/11. They showed me 9/11 itself, and I am from New York. How did you react to seeing these future events, especially something as significant as 9/11? When we stopped at that scene, I remember saying, "I have friends in that building," and almost like I went to run. They grabbed me and said, "You can't do anything. Basically, you're not here now. This is your future." They explained this to me, and it was emotional at the time because I did have friends in the tower, the first tower that went down. Where did they take you after that? Then we were whisked off again to another and another and another. But the first place we were whisked off to after that was my mother-in-law's living room. On the morning of 9/11, my wife and I were scheduled to go into New York City to do some of our buying. We did some buying from jewelry distributors. Can you describe what you saw in your mother-in-law's living room? I remember my mother-in-law calling us down. I wasn't feeling well that morning for some reason. She called us down, and then we saw the tower burning at the time. Then we watched it coming down. People were running every which way but loose. I actually started to run again because I said, my friends. And they said, "You can't do anything again." It must have been incredibly frustrating to witness these events but not be able to intervene. Yes, it was insane because now I'm in my mother-in-law's house watching it alongside them. I started screaming at them, and then I realized all 3 of us are sitting there, and I'm screaming, "There's another plane coming." But of course, they didn't hear me. So for me, it was very hard to understand. I didn't know how this was all happening. I didn't know if this was just something that could have happened or something that was going to happen. Did they show you other future events as well? Yes, they showed me future events on top of that. These events led into one another, they would follow through. They brought me to Baghdad. I remember being in Baghdad because I believe it was Baghdad anyway. There were bombs going off all over again. I mean, instinctively, I think I went to move out of the way of the bombs, and they said, "This won't hurt you. This is your future." How did the pace of these visions change as you continued? From Baghdad, the flickering screens were moving so fast. It felt like it was in a computer, and clips of things were moving by faster and faster and faster. It was so advanced that it brought us to a point where it was like our future, you know, when you're at a stage where God doesn't want you to be. What did you see in this far future? We even have families and great friends not talking to each other anymore. This has to stop. We all have to sit and come together and talk again and bring out our views, and each side has to listen. The thing is, it's important that we do this because the hate that exists on the plane that exists today is too much. It's no good. It's not what God wants for this planet. It's not what God wants for our spirits. What did you learn about the purpose of our spirits being here on Earth? Our spirits are supposed to be love and joyous, but we're sent here to feel, and that's why we're here. Because on the other side, our only feeling is one of complete love, and we are a part of that love. The beauty of it is, here we get to feel things like pain, sorrow, anger, happiness, sadness. We feel everything on this side, and this is how our spirits grow. Our spirits' growth is through an educational process from when we're born to when we leave. Why is it important for us to have these experiences? It's so important that we learn as much as we can and experience as much as we can. So in the Hall of Events, at the end, they showed me basically two outcomes. Can you describe these two potential outcomes? They showed me a world where we almost turned into, there was destruction, cities were burned. I mean, it almost turned into. I explain it like the movie Mad Max Days or something like that. It was so bad. Then they showed me an opposite version of that. It was like two different worlds at the same time. So in other words, if we took the right path. What did you learn about the forces at play in our universe? The thing is, there are negative and positive energies in our universe that are so strong. There's always battling going on. The whole key there is that our energies are so important to keep on the positive plane because if we stay on a negative plane, we cause an imbalance. Did you gain any insights about the history of Earth and humanity? I believe our Earth has been here through hundreds and thousands of millions of years, but I believe we've done this over and over again. And I believe that we reach a point where God does a reset. We don't have to worry about bombs. I mean, God says, enough is enough. So that's why I'm saying if we don't stop and sit and listen to each other. What do you believe are the most important things we should focus on? I believe we all have the basics. Listen, if you're a good person and you're a decent human being, everyone wants to see our children safe. They explained to me that Jesus wants the children to be safe, and that's important. I believe that everybody would agree on that. Those are the only two things, the most important things. It's very important that we put this to an end, come to terms, talk to each other again. After the Hall of Events, where did your guides take you? That was the end of what I call the Hall of Events. From that point, the three guides brought me to a final level of enlightenment where I was surrounded by these beautiful, beautiful angels. Magnificent. We were all standing there, beams of light, but these angels were unbelievable. What happened at this level of enlightenment? This is where I was taught 9 principles of enlightenment. They had so much wisdom and knowledge, these angels, and they were passing all this on to me in these principles. Principles of choices, principles of intuition, principles of lessons, of warnings, of service. You were explaining about the importance of service. Can you elaborate more on that? Yes, it's important that we actually do something in service. We help each other. Even small acts of service, like just helping maybe an elderly person to their car with their groceries and passing a smile on to them. The smile is a gesture of love, and love begets love. You'll find if you smile a lot, the love comes around. The beauty of it is that we can give this kind of service every day because it's so simple. And service is so important that our spirit actually grows through this phase. That's where we come to different levels of enlightenment. It's wonderful. Interviewer, did you have any other profound experiences during this enlightenment phase? Bill, yes, I remember another spirit approaching me, coming almost right into me. I feel his brightness and his light, and he's explaining things to me. All of a sudden, I see beautiful water flows of numbers just flowing like crystal lights. It was amazing because they reflected off of everything. Interviewer, can you describe what you saw in more detail? Bill, I would see numbers like 81. I would see the 369 numbers. They told me that these numbers and these symbols they were showing me represented our universe. At the time, I didn't know what to make of any of this. I knew nothing about near-death experiences or anything to do with that. Interviewer, did they give you any specific information about numbers related to you? Bill, they did tell me one very important thing. They said I had an alert system, a set of numbers, and my alert system numbers were 66. I already knew this in my life because throughout my whole life, I will never forget this, at times when certain events happen, good events or bad events, it didn't matter, this number 66 would appear on everything I looked at. How would these numbers manifest in your daily life? I could be driving and all of a sudden I'd see it's 606. I could look down at the speedometer and it says 66. I could look up at the TV set and all of a sudden it says 66 about something. I would get these sequences of numbers like that in my life already. They told me to pay attention closely to those numbers because that's one of my guardians being able to send me messages to teach me something's wrong. Interviewer, as your experience was coming to an end, what happened? Bill, at the end of this experience of the Hall of Events, a beautiful spirit approaches me, a magnificent sweet glowing light, and she explains to me that I must return. She explains to me, you have the understanding of the 9 principles of enlightenment. I remember saying yes, and then she said again, you must return. How did you react to being told you had to return? I said, no, I'm home. I'm finally home. I'm home in the light of our Lord. I'm loved now. Don't take this away from me. I begged, I pleaded. I'll never forget it because I begged over and over again. What did the Spirit say in response? She said, you understand the 9 principles of light again. You must return. Well, at the time, I had my second son in my wife's belly at home in Florida, and he was about to be born. She said to me again, you must return. I said no again. I don't want to return. Please, please don't send me back. Did the Spirit reveal anything else to you? She said, I am 6 of 6. You must return. The next thing I knew, I was being brought back. First, she mentioned me as Dad. At the beginning, I didn't know if it was Dad because of my son that was about to be born. I already had an older son Joey, and my son Johnny was about to be born. But finally, before I left, I remember she said, remember your future daughter. I am 6 of 6. That's intriguing. Did you have a daughter at the time? No, I didn't have a daughter then. So what happened next? How did you return to your body? The next thing I knew, I was whisked back, almost like through a vortex. It wasn't as pleasing as going, but I was totally brought back. Now I'm in bed, I have no feeling in my body. The only thing that I remember, because I didn't have air in my lungs for I don't know how long, it was just like when you're drowning and you completely have no oxygen for a length of time. I took this breath in, I finally got air back in my body, but I just stood there. The rest of my body didn't move, the rest of my body was almost like it was paralyzed. How long did this state last? I'm sitting there, and I can't move, but I could finally breathe again. It was labored, but I could breathe again. After maybe 10 or 15 minutes or so, I start feeling tingling going through my arms and my legs, and then sensation coming back. I finally was able to move a little bit. What did you do once you regained some movement? I remember hitting the operator at the hotel and saying, send somebody up here, help me. The next thing I know, I was in the hospital. They put me on oxygen again and they put me on medications again. Earlier, the Spirit mentioned a future daughter. Did that prophecy come true? Yes, that's what happened. Other than the fact that I now do have a daughter. She was born on the 6th day of the 6th month of 2000. This is years later. Remember, this was 1994 when my near-death experience happened. My daughter was born on June 6th of 2000. That beautiful beam of sweet light, and she's with me today. That's an incredible story. Looking back on this experience now, how has it affected your life and your perspective on the world? It's completely transformed how I see everything. I have a much deeper appreciation for life, for the connections we make with others, and for the importance of love and service. I try to live every day mindful of the lessons I learned during my experience, especially about the power of our choices and the impact we have on others. Has this experience changed your beliefs about death and what comes after? Absolutely. I no longer fear death. I see it as a transition, a return home in many ways. But I also understand that our time here on Earth is precious and purposeful. We're here to learn, to grow, to love, and to help each other. The Life Review showed me how interconnected we all are and how our actions ripple out to affect others in ways we may not even realize. You mentioned the 9 principles of enlightenment. Can you share more about what these principles are and how they've influenced your life since? The 9 principles cover things like the power of choice, the importance of intuition, the nature of life lessons, the role of service, and the interconnectedness of all things. They've become a guide for how I try to live my life. I make a conscious effort to be more aware of my choices, to listen to my intuition, to see challenges as opportunities for growth, and to find ways to be of service to others every day. Have you had any experiences since then that have reinforced what you learned during your near-death experience? Yes, many times. The number sequences, especially 66, continue to show up at significant moments in my life. It's like a reminder that I'm being watched over and guided. And of course, the birth of my daughter on June 6, 2000 was a powerful confirmation of what I was told during my experience. How has this experience affected your relationships with others? It's made me much more conscious of how I treat people and the energy I put out into the world. I try to approach everyone with love and understanding, knowing that we're all on our own journeys of growth and learning. I'm also more open about sharing my experience and the insights I gained, hoping that it might help others find more meaning and purpose in their lives. What message do you hope people will take away from hearing about your near-death experience? I hope people understand that love is the most powerful force in the universe. The love I experienced during my NDE was beyond anything I can adequately describe, and I believe it's what we're all ultimately seeking. I want people to know that their lives have profound meaning and purpose, that every action matters, and that we have the power to create positive change in the world through our choices and actions. I also hope people will take to heart the warning I was shown about potential futures. We're at a critical point where we need to come together, to listen to each other, to find common ground. The future isn't set in stone. We have the power to shape it through our collective choices and actions. That's a powerful message. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your experience or the insights you've gained? I'd just like to emphasize the importance of living with awareness and intention. Every day is an opportunity to grow, to love, to serve others. We don't need to have a near-death experience to start living with greater purpose and compassion. The principles I learned about choice, intuition, service, and love are available to all of us, all the time. It's up to us to put them into practice. And remember, we're all connected. The kindness you show to a stranger, the love you share with your family, the way you treat yourself, it all ripples out and affects the whole. We each have the power to make a positive difference in the world, and I believe that's why we're here. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible story and insights with us, Bill. I'm sure your experience will give our listeners a lot to think about regarding life, death, and the nature of our existence. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story. If it helps even one person find more meaning or love in their life, then I'm grateful. Remember, love is the key. Choose love, be kind, and know that you are deeply, profoundly loved.